Aristotle wrote that stories are not just a series of events, but that stories are a series of events that have, wait for it, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, sheesh, thanks a lot for nothing, Aristotle, but doesn't every series of events automatically have a beginning, a middle, and an end? Well, the answer is no, they don't. And anybody who's listened to a 3-year-old tell a story knows this, when after 5 minutes long of listening to, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, you suddenly realize that there's no meaningful point in sight, and there's no obvious end in sight either. However cute it may be, there is no beginning, middle, and end to that conversation. But Aristotle gives us a way to turn events into stories. And it's my intention in this lesson to explain to you the absolute brilliance of what Aristotle meant by beginning, middle, and end, and how you can use this information to break open the meaning of stories and to tell great stories yourself. If you want to write this information down, you'll find a page in your workbook titled Lesson 3 Notes. The first thing to explain is that over the centuries, Aristotle's beginning, middle, and end have taken on different names. These days, the terms that are most often used are Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. But what do we mean by an act? Well, in some ways, it's helpful to think of an act as a different world. In Act 1, you can think of that as the normal world of the main character. In Act 2, you can think of that part of the story as the normal world of the main character that's been turned upside down. And in Act 3, you can think of that part of the story as the new world of the main character. Sometimes what I mean by the world actually means different locations, but it doesn't have to. It can mean that the reality of things has changed so much that it only feels like a different world for the main character. And in that case, what we're talking about then is the normal everyday reality of the main character, the reality of the main character turned upside down, and then the new reality of the main character. In short, when a series of events follows this pattern, normal world, world turned upside down, and the new world, it ceases to be just a series of events and it becomes a cohesive, integrated, satisfying story. So how does that help us tell better stories? Well, as an author, you now have a concrete to-do list. Your main job in Act 1 is to set things up. Set up the story, the world, the main character, and the main character's want. Your main job in Act 2 is to send your main character on a quest for the want, turning the main character's world upside down, forcing them to pursue the want, and eventually allowing them to fail in their quest. And that leads us to Act 3, where your main job as an author is to bring about the big showdown between the main character and the opposing forces over who gets the want. And it's during the big showdown that the main character changes and finally either gets the want or loses it forever, in either event bringing about a new world. By the way, I hope you caught all 4 of the ingredients that we discussed in the last lesson. If you'll remember the 3 C's in a question, every story ever told has a character who undergoes conflict and change, all while pursuing a want. Now, if you think about it for a moment, you'll realize that all 4 of those ingredients are found in each of the 3 acts of a story. But if you look a little closer, you'll also notice something kind of helpful. The beginning of every story, Act 1, the setup, has character, conflict, change, and a want. But what's the overwhelming focus of Act 1? Well, it's all about setting up the main character and the main character's want. Act 2, the middle of every story, also has all 4 ingredients, but what's the focus there? Well, the focus in Act 2 is the conflict as the main character pursues the want. And in Act 3, while it too has all 4 ingredients, the focus there is most heavily on the change that the main character undergoes in the final showdown over the want. So while all 4 ingredients are found in each of these acts, you can think of Act 1 as the world of the character, Act 2 as the world of the conflict, and Act 3 as the world of change, all of which is driven by the want. If you can do that in an interesting way, you've done so much more than just recount a series of events. You've told a tremendous story. By the way, can you guess which act Aristotle said that most authors forget? Well, we discussed last time how most often the ingredients that are forgotten are change and a want, and Aristotle agreed. He wrote that most authors do a great job of creating interesting characters and interesting worlds and having them go on interesting quests, but that once the main character is in Act 2 on that quest, most authors struggle to find a meaningful way to bring about a satisfying end, a real honest, believable, yet unexpected end that brings together all of the aspects of the story in the big showdown. And often that's because the author never gave much thought as to why the main character went on the quest in the first place. In other words, the author had forgotten to give the main character a real want. So I hope you're starting to see Aristotle's brilliance here, that a story is not just a series of events, but that it's a series of events with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so far, all of this is really nice sounding theory, but what does it look like in real life? Well, let's take a look at the 3-act structure of The Lion King and find out. Hey, if you liked that video, I've got some great news for you. That was just an excerpt of a much longer video where we go all sorts of in depth with everything we just talked about. I'll link it up right there so you can go take a look at it. I'll see you there.